movers and shakers in this session, and I don't want to preempt the discussion, but to call those persons who have been involved in the activities. I now call on Mr. Herman, who has been very much involved, and he'll tell you more of his intervention with the German Corporation and other stakeholders. Mr. Herman.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let me welcome each and every one of you to one of the most beautiful parts of this country. Not just because it's beautiful, because of what it's been able to produce. Great food, great atmosphere, and most significantly, a strong sense of volunteerism amongst the persons in this community. It was like yesterday when my general manager here, Mr. Felix, says to me, "You have two ladies that will be coming in here to see us, so I need you to be present." And we met two beautiful, wonderful ladies in the person of Eva at the back there and Charmaine Closelma, and we discussed, among other things, possibility of working with the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative. And of course, Bellevue has been around for 30 plus years, so we would have had some good history to have been able to cause these wonderful ladies to try to meet us. And I want to describe that meeting with one word. In fact, I tried to find one word, but I couldn't. But to me and to us at Bellevue, it is probably the crowning moment in our development. Because a number of the work that we had been trying to do in building resilience, in best practice, we found ourselves a partner in the GIZ CATS program that was just ideal. And for us at Bellevue, this is not just the significance of it, but to consider the tremendous financial constraints within the European community. Up to recently, we see the problems with Greece. And the German federal government and the taxpayers have always been around to bail them out. And to still have resources to put into St. Lucia, a small island development state, speaks volume of the commitment of the German government in creating stability, in creating the will to do things by yourselves. And we want Ambassador to extend our sincere thanks to your counselor, Angela Merkel, for this assistance. The CATS project, which is all about the ridge to reef, ensuring that what happens on the ridge does not destroy the reef. And from there, we had a wonderful workshop. And out of that workshop, we were able to come up with a number of priority areas. Bellevue, recognizing that this was not the usual funding agency, used its wisdom to set up a projects department, for which I was asked to head, of course, volunteerism, on a voluntarily basis. We don't have the funding yet to make it too big. And we had the pleasure of working with Eva here as the technical person, and my good friend here, Mr. Prosper, as the local liaison personnel. And together, we meet every Tuesday. In fact, this project is probably one of the most efficient in the Caribbean in terms of ensuring due process and monitoring and evaluation. We have no match. We are able to come up with a wonderful program combating hydroclimatic conditions through smart agriculture. And out of that program, we brought in about 15 to 20 plus persons with good gender balance as well as age, because we are very concerned about succession planning. And out of this, we had the pleasure of the company of Mr. Quint here, Odlum, Mr. Constantine, Mr. Alexis. Mr. Alexis dealt with smart agriculture. Quint dealt with water management. And Mr. Constantine dealt with alternative pest control, and that is a big one. We were able to get funding to prepare a workshop for that purpose, and out of that workshop we came up with a good agricultural practice, a demo plot, to achieve the following. One, to look at the use of water, compare drip irrigation to sprinkler. We also wanted to compare mulch with grass, mulch with plastic, and non-mulch. But you know, in everything there are constraints, and we were met with a number of constraints. But what we learned here with this CATS project is that every constraint is an opportunity, and that's what we did. And our demo plot has yielded great results for us, that today, Mr. P.S., you'd be glad to hear that, we've been able, out of the evaluation of that project, the farmers wanted to find ways to combat the dreaded curly leaf virus that's affecting tomato production. And we complied, and we've been able to test successfully about 3 or 4 varieties of tomatoes. And as I speak, my marketing officer here and my general manager will tell you, for the first time in a long time, as well as Mr. Alexis, head of Extension District 6, we have not been short of tomato production. And the plan as to what we have achieved is that by next year, Mr. P.S., there will be no need for imports, because we would have been able to produce year-round in the quantity, the volume, the quality that is required. Because of the magnitude of what we have achieved, way beyond our expectation, we are now discussing with Eva the closure of the first phase of that project, because we have farmers that are already growing acres of tomatoes, 1.5 acres within this area, and the results have been just fantastic. So we are now moving into an era of research and development. What do we hope to achieve at that level is to test a number of different commodities on organic farm that we operate. And the good news about this is that everything on that farm excuse me, will be tested with pesticides manufactured locally using local material. And we are so confident that we expect within a year and a half our products will be on the market. No longer will we be buying the toxic chemicals that are available, but we will be selling locally produced, and we intend to use this through a whole range of recycling. For example, all those plastic bottles that are being thrown at the dump, all of these would be used. We've also been very instrumental, and you've seen this huge shredder here. It is all about reducing the carbon footprint with the organic fertilizers, the inorganic fertilizer. There will come a time when it will be almost down to zero. Why are we interested in this? Our main industry is tourism. So we'll be creating and growing fruits and vegetables strictly organic within a certain protocol that the hotels will have no choice but to purchase. So rather than beg them, they will be coming to us. Because as we move this project forward, they will become part of it. And I am pleased to announce that as of December, as of 31st this year, Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, in its shop, will no longer be selling Gramoxone and Touchdown. It's our small way of ensuring that we'll produce wholesome food. It's been banned in Europe, so we're following suit. We are about to start to move into what we refer to as our Organic Women's Network, and we are working in conjunction with CAFRA, the Caribbean Feminist Research Agency. And not just are we going to be looking at it from just Bellevue and St. Lucia, but throughout the OECS, to look at empowering women and also ensuring that the health of our women and children are safeguarded by not exposing them to toxicity or toxic chemicals. So whatever we use will be from what we have in our backyard. From this manufacturing, we'll be producing a whole range of hormones. And in conclusion, I have always been warned that when I get to the podium, I don't know how to leave it. So I'm going to surprise them today. In conclusion, all of this could not have been possible if it had not been for a very strong collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, Extension Region 6. Nothing we do here is without the presence of Mr. Alexis. Dr. Jaria here is always a phone call away, and he's been always briefed on everything we do. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
In encapsulation, as I said, was a very small nutshell. But what has come out of your submission has been one of strategic alliance, building civil society, because at this point, at this juncture in this country, we cannot allow our country to go down, because if we do not build civil society, we will not be able to realize our true potential. We have seen within Mr. Herman's submission that there have been a number of strategic alliances formed, but most importantly, we need to invoke, or we need to cause the government to bring out what they call the green policy paper, because this country has a green policy paper, but it is hidden somewhere, and we have to get it out of the closet somewhere. So I'm saying with the German cooperation, we are convinced that we will be able to achieve this. With no further ado on this matter, Mr. Herman, thank you very much. Our next guest is going to be Mr. Dr. Horst Vogel. Excuse me for the pronunciation.
It's okay.
Okay. Head of the CATS mission. Thank you very much.
Now, CATS, Caribbean Aquaterrestrial Solutions, is a regional program between the Federal Republic of Germany and the Caribbean Community. It's the CARICOM Secretariat, as you know, is based in Guyana. And being a regional program, we are not only operating in the beautiful island of St. Lucia, but in fact in a total of 8 Anglophone English-speaking countries in the Caribbean, starting all the way from mainland Guyana, which is a country in its own league in our portfolio, and then across the Eastern Caribbean, all the way down south from Grenada, across to St. Vincent, then St. Lucia, right in the heart of our portfolio in the Eastern Caribbean, Dominica and St. Kitts and Nevis, the smallest country, I was told, in the Western Hemisphere. And then all across the beautiful Caribbean basin to Jamaica, which again I would say, and I think our colleague Robert Carr will confirm that, is again a country in its own league. And we end up in Belize again on the mainland. And you see already, this is a very, very diverse portfolio. But it so comes that we are based in St. Lucia, in fact in Castries, on the beautiful Morne Fortune, and that's why we call ourselves, at least myself, I keep on calling myself, or referring to myself, as a real fortunate man, as King Fortune, you know. Sitting there on this beautiful top of the mountain, and I sometimes have already said to Minister Fletcher, if I get my binoculars out, I can watch you in your office, you know. But obviously vice versa applies the same, you know. Now, the Caribbean Aquaterrestrial Solutions is actually an artificial program in a way, because in fact we are dealing with 2 programs. One is on adaptation to climate change in rural economies and natural resources. That's the one that is collaborating with the Bellevue Farmers Corporation or Cooperative. And then we also got another program which is on the management of coastal resources and the conservation of marine biodiversity. And with that program, we're actually cooperating with the SSMA here in Soufrière. And given that we have a focus in the Eastern Caribbean, as I mentioned, 5 countries in the Eastern Caribbean, all more or less similar population size, all more or less same space, I mean country-wise, We decided very early on in this program, and we are exactly 2.5 years old now. We started at the turn of February, March 2013, so we are celebrating our 2.5 birthday right now. We decided that we should actually run these two programs just as one program, because we realized very early on that whatever happens on the land here on these small islands immediately affects the marine protected areas. And then we said, why don't we actually choose an approach where we pick key or core marine protected areas, just like the SSMA here in St. Lucia, and then also deal with the immediate hinterland, the watershed of those marine protected areas. And that's how we came to collaborate with the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative. And I think you would agree, but you are also open to correct us, that the hinterland all the way up to Font Saint-Jacques, up to Des Roches, is a perfect ridge to reef, or as we also call it, an aquaterrestrial approach. And we really mean it. That name wasn't chosen just by chance, but the name really, nomen est omen, as the Latin or the Romans said, the name really means something. We want to run this as an aquaterrestrial or ridge to reef approach. We also don't want to come up with ever more problems, but with solutions. So even the solutions part was chosen on purpose. And what is equally important, we want Caribbean solutions, and that we take very serious. And that's why I would also say what the gentleman at the beginning said about gifts. I would actually correct that. It's not really a gift, because we see this as a cooperation of mutual benefit. And we see this cooperation with the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, but also with the SSMA, as something that doesn't only benefit the St. Lucians or these organizations, but that equally benefits GIZ and German cooperation as a whole, because whatever we learn from you guys here, we can also take it someplace else in any of the other countries, be it the Caribbean or even beyond. And we have already, through that approach, attracted attention. For example, we are very likely now to get extra funds on a cashew project. And obviously, we would like to integrate a cashew project in this aquaterrestrial or an agroforestry approach here in St. Lucia, but also in other countries. So here again, we are going to need your expertise. And hopefully, at the end of the day, we can see or can say that it was a mutually beneficial cooperation where you benefited from what we brought in, but we also benefited what we learned from you. And I can say, and I don't mean it, and I don't mean to blow smoke up somebody's bum. We really mean it, because we are learning a lot, and we can also utilize this in other countries, as I said before. And the mere fact that Mr. Herman mentioned that the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative is already 30 years old. I mean, how can we match that expertise, especially when we come as foreigners, as expatriates into the Caribbean? So obviously, Mr. Herman and Mr. Felix and everybody else from the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, we are also very grateful that you gave us the chance to work with you. I mean, sometimes you even gave me a slight headache. Not only did Mr. Herman make me sweat profusely this morning, but you also gave me a slight headache sometimes, and I said to myself, and sometimes also casually to our team, what actually can we really contribute to the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, because they are so professional and they are so well established that it is hard sometimes. And I hope it's not only going to be the material procurements like the vehicle for the SSMA and the shredder outside, but that it is more, that is really something, a learning process, a mutual learning process, at the end of which we all learn together. And one learning field that definitely we need to work on together between Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, between the SSMA, between CAFA and GIZ, is obviously this whole ridge to reef approach. We discuss this a lot up in Castries mainly on our Monday morning meetings, that we still don't really live up to this whole approach. I mean, do farmers in the Castries, in the Soufrière area already understand and appreciate this approach? Do fishermen already understand and appreciate this approach? We are not too sure yet, but on the other hand, we are only 2.5 years old. And I think here again, we call upon you, we request you to really come forth with your ideas, with your insider knowledge, and with your expertise to help us guide this way. And I know historically, and now I'm maybe stepping on my own toe, I always say there's one little problem in the Caribbean that we face, especially with our culture background, where we are very straightforward and very... I mean, the British always say the Germans and the Dutch are rude because we always keep on asking the question straight into people's face until we really got an answer. And sometimes we feel that here in the Caribbean, maybe historically determined, it's the other way around. People are withhold things very careful in information provision and very cautious. And that's why we really appeal to you. Let us know, guide us. We don't know everything. As I already said, and I'm repeating myself, in the field of agriculture in Soufrière, we definitely know even less than you. And so we need your input, we need your information, we need your guidance, and then we are also able to really hopefully address your requests, your needs in a more tailor-made fashion. And with that appeal, and again with my acknowledgement of how grateful we are to work with you and with the SSMA, I would like to stop here and hand over to the next person. Thank you.
At this juncture, we will call on Kaffa to the podium in the name of Mr. Lesmond Magua.
So, my colleague, Dr. Vogel, has given you a lot of information about the CATS program. But what I will deal with is the relationship that has existed between CAFA, Caribbean Public Health Agency, its origination, and with GIZ and the CATS program. CAFA, Caribbean Public Health Agency, is the coming together of 5 regional institutions. And our institution is part of it. That was the Caribbean Environmental Health Institute. Most of my colleagues and friends here would remember. And CAFA only came to being on the 1st of January 2013. And as Dr. Vogel said earlier, that is the time that the relationship actually started between CAFA and GIZ. Okay, so basically that's the genesis of the two. Our role, CAFA's role, is as co-implementer of the CATS program. So we do backstopping, things like today, we assist, we discuss at meetings, as co-implementer, representing the Caribbean community. So we are a co-presenter on behalf of the Caribbean community, CARICOM. Actually, the program CATS has complemented the program that we have been having from CEI into CAFA, into the Environmental Health and Sustainable Development program that we have had for a long time. Allow me to use these 3 nice letters, PPP, people, profit, and planet. And if you have to think of sustainable development, in a nutshell, this is what you think it. How you can match and manage people effectively, knowledge, skills, attitude, behavior, and practices with the profit that they're going to make, right, and not destroy the planet. So you have to, and this is both sides of the coin, ourselves and GIZ, are on the same wavelength, because you have to manage people effectively so that they take care of the environment and then make profit sufficiently enough to be sustainable. So this is where our work is complemented by GIZ, as well as GIZ work is complemented by the work of CAFA. Our collaboration on the Ridge to Rift has been extensive. We have visited most of the countries they have visited, as was mentioned before. We have been, as I've mentioned before, co-implementers. But I need to discuss our skill set, where we have utilized our skill set because of what we have had and the service we have had at CAFA. For instance, we have a lab. We can do water quality, for example. Okay? So we have done a lot of water quality monitoring, covering both fresh and marine waters. Okay? We have assisted in the sustainable land management programs through soil conservation, reduction in sedimentation load to the water bodies. And of course, and why are we here today? The good agricultural practices to build resilience to climate change in agriculture. Our skill set, chemical management. We have always been on the forefront of chemical management. As Mr. Herman said earlier, the reuse of toxic chemical. I must add here that my first study was I did environmental chemistry, and I'm very that's my pet subject, my core subject, and I've always advocated against the use of toxic chemicals, knowing what it can do. Apart from we know the benefits, but the misuse, because we are human beings, we can either deviate from norms, and chances of accidents are potential for happening. So I have always advocated the proper use of chemical. And this is one of the areas that you will get in your CATS program. Water use and water management is one of the areas that we do together very well, right? Personal protection, as you could see already here, it's been as part of the program, personal protection. Human health is one of the areas that we look after. And it is in the Rich to Riches program as well, looking at these areas. Energy is another area, the use of either alternative energy or the use and management of the energy that you're using. So in all, this is the area of full collaboration we've had with GIZ, the CATS program. Now, it's not a project. I do not want it to be seen as a project, because a project has a beginning and an end. You with me? And you have a consultant after a project come and tell you that you should have done that, and then you start another project. We don't want to go like that, because we use the word sustainable land management, right? Why can't we look at how to sustain the program, how to energize the program, get it going, right? And I will put my foot in my mouth by saying that CAFA will, right, guarantee support through CARICOM for GIZ for the sustainability of the program, because they see the benefits, they understand the benefits because of, as I told you earlier, people and profits and the environment. So here again, you could see the importance of keeping the sustainability of the program. Okay. Another area that we want to see continued and more sustainable is what we teach, the passing of information, the passing of skills development and training. So, for instance, the people who would have been trained in good agricultural activities should not die with it. They should pass it on to, the younger ones. So it becomes an inbred system that can be passed on. So this is where we look at continuing sustainability of the program. Okay, so the country will benefit, the nation will benefit, the region will benefit, and of course, the world will benefit, and there will be less program. Because we are looking at many areas. Even we talk about climate change. A lot of ideas, a lot of people are writing now about what caused, what should be done, and things like that. And it is not being filtered. But sometimes little can you do. For instance, the rich to rich. Sorry. Yeah. In its simple form, right? It is allowing you to build resilience to climate change issues. So you understand? So there is an element of sustainability. And I would wish to thank you for being here, for coming. I hope that I have delivered on behalf of CAFA something that you can take home and munch on it, and CATS and GIZ as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks much. At this point, we will call on three giants. Presentation of the German engagement for climate change, adaptation, and biodiversity. We have Mr. Michael Bob as one. Michael Frodenberg. Yes. Deputy head of the mission, a German ambassador in Port of Spain. Mr. Frodenberg. That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to speak to you at this handing over ceremony today. I have already learned something. I have learned that CATS is not only the name of a musical, but also a very interesting life-saving program here in St. Lucia. I wish you all the best for the future and for the efforts you have already taken. I thank you. I've been asked to speak about the German efforts in the whole region, meaning cooperation, economic cooperation. First of all, let me say to you that Germany is looking forward to further and deepen the bilateral relations with St. Lucia, as well as the relations between the European Union, which is very dear to us, and the CARICOM as a whole. We support regional cooperation as a tool to combine our efforts for the countries affected by climate change and underdevelopment. St. Lucia can bear witness, I think, to climate-related disasters and the effects of national resilience and international solidarity. Germany and the Caribbean cooperate in areas as varied as adaptation to climate change, renewable energies, and of course energy efficiency, and last not least, improving economic competitiveness. Climate change during this century, I am sure, will have broad impacts on human activities and ecosystems. The likely consequences are of such magnitude that the simultaneous need to adapt to the new climate conditions and to reduce the carbon footprint to prevent further damage will likely become one of the main driving forces in the global community in the future. the Caribbean is particularly vulnerable to the observed and projected impacts of climate change because of its geographic location and reliance on natural resources for economic activities and livelihoods. Since 2010, Germany has pledged over 25 million euro to CARICOM for adaptation to climate change. In addition to that, the German Development Bank KfW is supporting the Caribbean Challenge Initiative with funds totaling around 30 million euros. Around 60% of the funds of the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund are coming from Germany. Last year only, over 10 million euro went into the financial cooperation project on coastal protection in the whole CARICOM space. On May 29, 2013, the project Climate Risk Adaptation and Insurance in the Caribbean was launched here in Castries, St. Lucia, and it is being financed by the Federal Ministry of Environment. This project is being implemented, amongst others, with the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility and addresses vulnerabilities by promoting risk insurance instruments to manage and transfer risk as far as that is possible. Under the aegis of this project, plans have been developed aimed at low-income individuals and financial institutions for implementation in Jamaica, in St. Lucia, Belize, Grenada, and Guyana. Based on the experience gathered in these countries, the project is planned to be extended on the entire region. Since 2003, Germany has funded the Caribbean Renewable Energy Development Program with, in the meantime, 12 million euro. This program is supporting institutional structures to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency in that region. I come to a conclusion. Germany and St. Lucia share values like democracy and human rights. We also share challenges from a firm basis for closer partnership between our countries and the EU and the Caribbean as a whole. As we approach the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in Paris later this year, those partnerships become even more important, I think, even more important as before. Let us work together on this. And thank you very much.
Our next speaker is no other but my peers, Dr. Gabriel, who will present you an agricultural perspective as to what is going on in the ministry and the intervention in the sector.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, invited guests, good morning all. Contrary to what my esteemed chairperson might have intimated, I really wanted us to focus a bit this morning on I guess, the status of agriculture in St. Lucia's economy. So this is what the content of my little remarks to you is going to be about. Agriculture, livestock production, and fishing continue to be critical components of St. Lucia's economy, playing a significant role in its socio-economic development, even though their contribution to GDP has been steadily declining. The average contribution of agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fisheries to GDP in the 10 years from 1995 to 2004 was 4.5%. Over the 11-year period from 2004 to 2014, that contribution declined to an average of 3.5%. The lowest contribution of 2.6% was recorded in 2011, followed by 2.8% last year. The highest contribution during that period was 4.5% in 2004. If we compare that to real estate, which in the same period averages 17%, transport, which averages 12.3%, hotels and tourism 10.3%, construction 9.73%, and manufacturing 5%, we get a clearer sense of how agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fisheries, when taken together, compared to other sectors of the economy in terms of GDP contribution. Now, having looked at those figures, can we conclude that agriculture and fisheries are the backbone of the country's economy? Well, I'm not an economist, but I wish to contend that the answer to that is actually yes. You see, we may be able to survive without tourism, transportation, manufacturing, and so on, but we can never survive without food. There will always be need for food. So there will always be need for agriculture, livestock production, and fishing. It was the wealth that came from banana farming that went into such things as housing, vehicle purchases, consumer goods, etc., and spurred developments in other sectors in St. Lucia, such as construction, car dealerships, supermarkets, and so on. In addition, while in many sectors, wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, in agriculture, livestock production, and fishing, wealth is more widely spread amongst the participants in the industry. It has been said that the dollar earned in agriculture, livestock, and fishing circulates more in our economy than the dollar earned in, say, tourism, for example. Agriculture, livestock production, and fishing have been with us from the beginning. They will remain with us until the end. We cannot survive without them. In that context, therefore, they have been and will continue to be the backbone of our economy. However, in addition to that, no discussion on agriculture, livestock, and fisheries is complete without due consideration to their role in food security, rural development, and social stability, or what some of us prefer to call social peace. In the context of food security, as most of you are probably aware, our food import bill on average stands at a whopping $350 million EC. The average of 2013 and 2014, that is. In contrast, agriculture, livestock, and fishing contributed $79 million and $70 million to GDP in 2013 and 2014, respectively. This is a clear indication of how susceptible we would be to shortages of food on the international market and our inability to feed ourselves. If you do the math, these figures highlight the fact that more than 80% of what we consume is imported. And some of you might have heard our Minister for Agriculture, Food Production, Fisheries, Cooperatives and Rural Development, the Honorable Moses Jean-Baptiste, highlight this fact in other fora. These figures also highlight the need for continued growth in the local agriculture, livestock, and fishing sectors. So, Mr. Herman, I'm very encouraged by the results that you have achieved with tomatoes. And I look forward to the day when we do not have to import not only tomatoes, but other fresh produce that we are capable of producing locally. In the context of rural development, agriculture, livestock production, and fishing are among the main sources of wealth creation in the rural environment. For example, banana exports to the UK in 2013 and 2014 were $22 and $16.2 million respectively, even though the number of farmers declined slightly from 580 to 501. For that same period, supermarket purchases of other crops remained relatively unchanged in volume, but increases in price led to an overall increase in revenue to farmers by 7.2% to $11.4 million in 2014, compared to $10.6 million in 2013. Hotel purchases, on the other hand, increased by 5%, with an increase in revenue to $6.7 million, an increase of 7% in revenue. Employment in the sector in 2014 increased by 1.2% over 2013. From the perspective of livestock production, chicken production increased by 13.9% compared to 2013, continuing a 5-year growth trend. Revenue increased by 17.8% to 22.4 million compared to 19.1 in 2013. Self-sufficiency in eggs has been maintained for years. An estimated 1.3 million dozen eggs were produced compared to 1.1 million in 2013. That's last year. Revenues through egg purchases increased by 11.5% to $7.9 million from $7.1 in 2013. Pork production as well increased by 16.6% compared to 2013, generating 2.4 million in 2014. Fisheries. There was an overall estimated 3.4% increase in volumes of fish landed and an estimated 1.2% growth in revenue to 26.2 million, even while we are mindful that this data alone must not be allowed to subvert us from the objective of sustainable fisheries management. These factors help us to appreciate the kind of contribution that agriculture, livestock, and fishing are making to rural wealth creation in St. Lucia and ultimately to the development of the rural areas. From the standpoint of social stability, wealth generation and employment from agriculture, livestock production, and fishing help to stem the tide of rural-urban drift, thus reducing the possibilities of conflict and violence that tend to accompany overpopulated urban environments. The engagement in meaningful revenue-generating activities also help to stabilize the rural communities. Agriculture, livestock, and fishing are all business activities, but they are all based on science. All businesses have a common objective, and that is to make and continually increase profit. That objective is achieved by reducing costs and increasing earnings. In order to achieve this, we must put the science back into agriculture and fishing. We must apply the science. We must do the research into what works in our conditions and apply that which is found to be adequate and appropriate to our needs. That must be part of the future for agriculture, livestock, and fishing in St. Lucia. The research, development, and application of appropriate scientific and technological solutions to the unique problems facing these industries with a view to optimizing profits along the respective value chains. Existing technologies may have to be modified and adapted to our needs. Creativity and entrepreneurship must be encouraged. The focus must be on adding value. We must enhance food security, reduce our food import bill, develop our rural communities, and continue to contribute meaningfully to this island's economy. I can't end, ladies and gentlemen, without thanking the German government and the Caribbean Aquaterrestrial Solutions Program for the great assistance that you have been providing and continue to provide to our farming and fishing communities, as well as our marine management authorities in St. Lucia. Thank you all very much.
Dr. Gabriel, those are revealing stats for me. And I would like a copy of that speech because it gives it put in my armory because I represent the National Association of Cooperatives in this country. And it begs for that data to fight the battle. There must be advocacy because some people believe that development of this country is about tourism sector, but food safety and security is key for this country. And I'm happy that you have raised those figures for me, that I can put my armory to advocate on behalf of the farming sector in support of the ministry. Thank you very much. At this juncture, I guess we're sensing the end of the first leg of activities for the day. But Mr. Michael Bob, I guess you still have to continue the process here. We'll ask you to do the vote of thanks as required. Thank you very much.
Well, the vote of thanks is always something very easy. But in doing that, sometimes you tend to forget people. But then, clearly, that's a very simple one for me. And we heard several speakers before the vote of thanks. And one of them that resonated in me was the CAFRA presentation saying that we should never treat this as a project because projects has a beginning and has an end. And in my past life or my last life working with forestry, we saw several projects, and I think I'm well placed now within being the interim manager at SMMA looking at the ridge to reef concept, because there were several things that we did as it related to the forest in terms of protection, sustainability, and looking at the effects that we see right now as it relates to the reef. It really broadens my horizon and seeing how best we can now create that synergy. And clearly, the CATS program, CATS 2, really speaks to the ridge to reef concept. So I think we need to applaud the whole German government and the CATS 2 GIZ project for a well thought of instrument in making the environment of St. Lucia a better place to live in. One of the things too that resonated in me in this presentation and in going forward is not just receiving equipment. It's about attitudinal change, because we could have a brand new van, a brand new shredder, all the dive gear that came into SMMA, the laptops, the refurbishment of the equipment, and if our fisher folk don't change attitudes, if the management plan that is going to be presented or is being presented for SMMA, the communication plan does not go down to the fisher folk to understand that spear fishing must not be done in the reserve. Our fishermen must not catch small lobsters. The whole thing with the dive association and the divers going into the reefs, into the areas and making sure that everything is done properly, to be able to work with our different partners, then we're going to only shoot ourselves not in the foot, but we're going to destroy an industry. We're going to destroy our fisheries. We're going to destroy the whole thing with our dive place. And so we need to make sure that this document speaks to protection, speaks to sustainability. And one of the things I have noticed very early in my new life in the marine ecosystem is the generational change. We had 10 and 15 years ago, the average age, because I worked in the Ministry of Agriculture, it might have been in forestry, but we saw in the reports the fisher folk, the average age of a fisherman was about 50. Now we have a completely new generation of fisher folk. And that is also changing. Because of the tourist industry, we're seeing more recreational fishermen wanting to get more fish in various areas. So we can see now a complete re-education of young fishermen. So that instrument that we're going to get out of CATS 2 in terms of the management plan, to have a management strategy, very important. The legislative framework is very, very important. It would now give SMMA something, some stability to be able to work with, because a management plan is only just a tool, it's written, but then we need to be able to have the communication plan alongside the legislative framework to give us the teeth, to give us that stability to be able to function and to be able to manage that resource in a sustainable way. So I felt I really wanted to make this point. And then obviously when we go to actually the ridge, from the ridge to the reef, we will now expose the entire audience and everybody here the work of SMMA and what CATS 2 has given to us and has benefited us in a great way. So I really want to say thank you for everybody who came. Thank you for your presence and everybody who spoke so eloquently in terms of the management and the sustainability of the CATS project. Thank you very much.